TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by HDA Model Works, suppliers of scale lighting products, detail accessory parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today. Hi everybody, Boyd here with you. Welcome back to the channel. Well, I told you guys I was going to be pulling something off the modeling shelf to work on for our next video build series. And here it is. I happened to grab something pretty big. This is the 172 scale Monogram B-36 Peacemaker. This is a really cool kit. This was actually one of my Grail kits that I'd been looking for a really long time. And a good modeling friend of mine from the modeling community found this for me and sent it to me, and I'm really happy he did. I had been looking for several years, missed out a couple times at some model shows and things like that and a couple of eBay auctions, but finally have the kit. I've been fascinated with this plane since I was a kid. My grandparents lived out in South Dakota, and back in the late 60s, I would say it was, sometime around there, we went over to Ellsworth Air Force Base, and there was a B-36 that used to be, I don't think they were any longer operational at that time. They may have been flying a couple of them around the country, you know, for reconnaissance or something like that at that time, but they were pretty well retired, I think. But they had one, you know, a static one sitting, and that base in South Dakota used to be a part of Strategic Air Command back in the day. I'm not sure if that base even still exists, but I remember being just totally blown away by the sheer size of this airplane. At the time, I had never seen anything bigger in my entire life. It was just absolutely huge. And I think a couple of years later, my dad and I were watching late night TV, and the movie Strategic Air Command came on with Jimmy Stewart, and saw the plane again in that movie, and just remembered seeing the real thing. And just always thought it was really cool. It's not the most beautiful of airplanes, but it's just kind of really a unique airplane in United States Air Force history, because it was really just a giant flying experiment. And really, if you look at all the information about this airplane, it really wasn't a very successful experiment. I mean, it taught us a few things as far as what I could research about all this, you know, about some long-range strategies and things like that back in the day, but it had a lot of failures as far as, you know, they had a lot of problems with the engines. It was, you know, not the most fuel-efficient airplane. It was designed to be a transcontinental bomber, you know, so it could reach anywhere in the world. But the unique thing about this airplane is it had, you know, certain models of it had a jet assist or JATO engine that they used to call them, for takeoff assist power. It was such a huge aircraft. Just to give you an example of the scale of this thing, the leading edge of the wings here was over 7 feet tall. So you can just imagine the size of this thing, and you know, a crewman could literally walk inside these wings to do, of course not while it was in flight or anything, but you know, service on the ground. They could literally stand up. Most of the people working on them could stand up and walk around inside the wings. It makes Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose look like a Tinker Toy. But this thing is just an amazing airplane. I've been wanting to build it a long time. Now, as I had mentioned, kind of talking about building this kit earlier on, I really wanted to kind of do the Jimmy Stewart airplane from the movie. And so if I was to do that, I'm not sure if this is the exact correct model for that airplane too. This is a RB-36H. Not sure if it's the same plane as we saw in the movie. It looks pretty similar. It does have the jet engines. I'm not sure if some of these pods here and there are, you know, correct and all that. And then I would have to go out and get different markings, which I could do. If you notice, these are the Star Trek fonts from the Star Trek Classic series. That's right, the USS Enterprise's fonts on the hull and everything are just basic Air Force markings. So the option is there. I'm sure I could have somebody do those for me, but I think what I'm going to do, what I thought was pretty cool, is that the 8th Air Force flew these out of Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota, so kind of as a little tribute to my granddad and my dad for taking me out there to see the airplane, and that my grandparents lived in South Dakota, and I spent a lot of time there growing up. I think I'm going to build it as this plane that we see on the cover here, because this is the 8th Air Force Ellsworth Air Force Base version of this airplane with the 8th Air Force markings. It supposedly appears here just like it would have flying out of South Dakota at the time when it was operational. So I think that would be pretty neat. And so I think I'll just go ahead and build it up just like this. We've got all the markings and everything. I really like the different... there's more paintwork here than you think. A lot of these B-36 planes were just done in a solid, sort of a dull, dull aircraft aluminum. This one we see here has some kind of mix and matching going on here with some bright, shiny, areas in like around the engine pods here at the very forward tip of the up around the cockpit area. It's supposed to be kind of shiny. We've got this kind of dull area here. Got some different. We've got this nice white on the bottom. So this is going to be a really fun paint scheme to work on. And of course, like I said, we've got the right decals. In this kit, I was happy to see, this is a vintage kit, and I was happy to see that the decals are in pretty good shape. A couple of wrinkles across the middle of them, but I think they'll be okay. I think they'll lay down. If the ink chipped off of them in a couple spots, they're just basic colors like black, and I think this one here is like a really dark blue. If I have to touch them up in a few spots, I'll be able to do that with no problem at all. It looks like a lot of the more intricate ones, like I noticed this 8th Air Force logo and a few other ones, look to be in really good shape. So that's what we're going to build. We're going to build the South Dakota version, Ellsworth Air Force Base version of this airplane. What I'll do now is I'm going to reposition the camera. I'll get it propped up here so we can look down onto the bench, and I'm going to just lay everything out here as far as the parts. Now, the other interesting thing about this model kit was that at the time, and I think for a long time, maybe until just recently, when I think HK or whoever it was started, when they released the large B-17, this kit held the record for the largest styrene plastic airplane kit you could buy. It's way bigger than the Monogram B-52. It's certainly a lot bigger than the Monogram B-29, which I built last year or 2 years ago now, the Enola Gay. So this one's going to get hung on my wall like the other ones did, because it's just too big of a plane to put on a shelf. And I really don't like hanging these things up, but we'll hang her on the wall when we're done. I can't tell you what the wingspan is. Once we get it all mocked out here and everything, I can maybe take a tape measure and try and take a guess. But I guarantee it's like way over 25 or 30 inches. It's probably about 30 inches or so. It's huge. So let me get the box opened up. We'll lay some parts out onto the bench here, and we'll show you all the parts. And then in this video, I'll talk about all the build plan and everything. And then we'll come back here just a few days later and start actually building on this. Don't know how many series or parts it'll take for the series, but whatever it does, it does. Hope you guys will follow along. This should be a really fun build. I'll be right back with a look at the parts. Okay, everybody, well, this is a huge box that I can't have on the bench along with the parts at the same time, so I'll just grab everything off to the side here and lay it out for you. Starting off first, we got the instruction sheet. This is pretty straightforward, like most of the old Monogram kits. Nicely done. No color photos or anything like that, but just your basic guide. You're starting off on the interior of the fuselage. Looks to be, Monogram always had nice color callouts on their old model kits. We've got all the colors listed here, and they're all listed in the sub-assemblies. So it looks like we're doing a little bit of aircraft interior green in certain sections that you can see into. The forward area here's got a little bit of detail, and the bomb bay. Unfortunately, the whole rear section of the ship is not detailed at all, and I'm not going to worry about too much of the interior. Just do all the detail that comes with the kit and everything. We've got the flight controls up here, the instrument panel, the flight deck up forward here. Most of the details there. Looks like a lot of that will be done in green. Some of the areas that we can see on the bottom, you're building the forward landing gear assembly here first, which is all done in that same color, aircraft green. We've got some crew figures, which is pretty cool. Nicely done in scale. We'll do those guys up. Here working at the nose gear. Now on this particular plane, it is a tricycle gear. In other words, your basic, it's not a tail dragger, so I'll have to check and see if there's any information or anything involved in the instructions here. For example, on the B-29, they want you to put some weight in the front end of it to keep the nose down. I think the overhang on this plane is a lot more substantial in the front. It would probably sit on the ground by itself, but we'll see about all that. This is going to hang on my wall anyway, you know, by the tail, so it's not going to really matter about that. But for sitting on the bench here when I'm working on it, it might be something that we want to look at. Going from the nose gear assembly, you go into the bomb bays and the racks. You get some bombs, 51 bombs all together. It looks like they even number them for you. Depending on whether you're going to build the bomb bay doors open or not. I haven't decided on that yet or not. Probably will do it open, since we can have them open with the landing gear down and they won't drag or anything like that. Probably can do that. Going to be hard to see hanging on my wall, but we'll know that that detail's there. More of the same. You got these huge wing spars that go into the side of the fuselage right now. They are massive to support the huge wings. You'll see the size of the wings here in just a minute. We've got the tail gunner position going in here. These guns are actually movable. Got the elevator assembly going on, pretty straightforward there. Here's where we get into the main wing assembly. We've got some little air intakes that go onto the wings. The hub assemblies for the propellers. Unique thing about this airplane is that we had you know, rearward facing propellers. So it was called a pusher prop. The nickname for this plane was, you know, 6 turning and 4 burning, so it had 6, you know, piston engines and 4 jets. So we, you know, the rest of the wing assembly here, tires going together here, main landing gear underneath of the wings. Got the landing gear door options. We'll look at the decal seat in just a second here. Optional whether you want to do the bomb bay doors open or closed. Like I said, thinking about it, we'll probably do them open. You got the jets going on here on the wingtips. And some detail work at the forward landing gear well there. Again, there's a little crew access ladder, some hatches with hinges. Hopefully I'm not going out of the picture there. I think these domes that I was pointing out on the cover, the artwork here that go on the lower fuselage, are optional depending on what model the airplane is. But we can look into that. Probably put them on because they look pretty cool. And here's your final assembly, the main wings going on, then your propellers and your final canopy work. I'm just masking off the canopy and using probably a Sharpie marker or a Molotow pen to do those. Now here's your decal placement guide. So let's see, we're looking at, kind of hard to see the side view. Okay, they give you both over here. So we're doing the upper one here, which is the Ellsworth Air Force Base, Weaver, South Dakota. We have the big triangle there on the back. We've got the U.S. Air Force logo there up on the front. Got the 8th Air Force logo there at the tail. So that's going to look pretty cool. Got the blue kind of wrap stripe around there. The Strategic Air Command logo on that. Pretty neat. And you got your basic painting guide. So all of our markings are there. Yep, so you got everything you need. All the paint colors. They've got polished aluminum, matte aluminum, silver, olive drab, semi-gloss black, gray, gloss white, yellow, and blue. So yeah, about 10 different colors there. We can do all that. This is going to be entirely done. I'm going to do all the detail work on this with craft paints, but the main fuselage color I'm going to use some rattle can. I very seldom use rattle cans, but I'm going to use some of the rattle can you know, chrome finish that I have to give it. I want this to have that really nice, like brightly polished look. And then we're going to dull down some of the areas, you know, that I mentioned. The forward area, the cockpit will be kind of bright. The tips on the some of the panels on the wings, the tips on the jet engines and things like that. Here's the markings that the kit came with. Like I said, I'm really glad they're not yellowed or anything like that. They look almost brand new. This kit's a little over 25 years old, so they're in good shape. But it had a couple of really, you know, sharp wrinkles in it, right, you know, going right across here. I think on this little triangle, there could be a tiny little few. It's hard to tell. There could be a few tiny little chips where the ink came off of that, but that's no problem. That's black. I'll be able to touch that up once I get it on the model and everything, and then once I spray over it with my clear sealer, it won't be noticeable at all. We actually have the cockpit decals in here for the instruments, which is something you rarely saw on the old Monogram kits, you know, back in the 70s and 80s. So that's pretty nice. And I'm not going to go too crazy on the interior. Just get the colors painted in there, get the figures painted up pretty decent, and like I said, it'll be. They just didn't do a whole lot of detail on the interior of this, unfortunately. But a lot of that gets hidden anyway once you go ahead and seal it all up. But time to start pulling some parts. The first sprue we have here is a major one. This is the looks like 3 of the wings, or wing halves, upper and lower. I'll pull these out of the bag for you here. And we're hung up right here in the middle. I'll get my tape measure really quick, and I'll just kind of lay these out, and we might be able to get a rough estimate of how much of a wingspan this thing has. But it's pretty massive. Let's see, let's get this one up here in kind of plain sight for us here. And I'll just taking a rough guess about the thickness of the fuselage, something like that. Let's go ahead and give this a measure here. 40-inch wingspan, guys, or thereabouts in that neighborhood. So that's pretty massive. So yeah, this is going to be a really impressive model when it's done. So basic molds look really good. There's as with the older airplane kits, all the detail is the raised type, which is fine. I think this will pass. I just really like a lot of the guys out there, I like to go back and build these vintage kits, even with all the deficiencies that they have. There's no question that a lot of the models today are much higher quality and all that, but there's something about these vintage kits too, and the subject matter on a lot of these isn't available in a new kit, so you have to go with what's up, what's out there. And every kid, I think, that was into big airplane models wanted this kit when they were a kid. I never was able to get one, but it's pretty cool to see it in front of me finally. So the plan will be to build it in sections, kind of follow the instructions. I'm not doing anything special. I'm not doing lighting or sounds or anything. It's just going to be a straight up, pretty much right out of the box build. Here's the, well, I guess I can show you some of these fine parts here. You can see we've got our little crew members here. Looks like mostly the flight crew, the control yokes, a few other little things there, the seats, and pretty decent detail and all that. The panel lines, like I said, even though they are raised, they're all pretty much here. You can see all the individual panels on the engine, housings and everything. Nice detail on the wings. Especially good enough where some of these, panels are going to have to be painted on after I do the main paint work. Highlighting different shades of gray, and whether it's going to be, bright silver or, bright polished aluminum, or more of a dull look in certain spots. We'll figure all that out. The next sprue is the remaining wing section. Just go ahead and take this out real quick. I don't know if I wasn't going to build this right away, I wouldn't pull these out of the bags for fear of losing stuff, but we're going to start on this guy this week. Here's 4 of the propellers. Here's our bombs that go in the bomb bay. One of the gun turrets, it looks like. These are all the hub assemblies for the propellers. There's that little ladder for the forward landing gear well. Detail all looks really good. I'm not seeing any major flaws in any of the molds. Second sprue here, more propeller hub stuff. Bomb bay doors. Here's the jets. Pretty decent detail on the intakes and everything. Nothing spectacular, but not bad. Here's the jet engine pods and the pylon mounts, struts if you want to call them that. Looks like wing filler detail. I'm not sure what these are. Could be part of the landing gear. Here's all the wheels and tires. Let's see, this one here is, get this one out and show it to you. Getting kind of out of control here, but this is looks like the flight deck. Now I want to show you this part right here. This is the main wing spar. You can just see that that's a beast of a part. It's huge and thick. So yeah, the wings have to be held up pretty stoutly on this model. They're so large. This is the flight deck here, upper and lower flight deck, main landing gear struts, forward nose gear strut, instrument panel, looks like the tail gunner tub possibly. Just some minor, here's the landing gear covers, forward and aft. Like I said, not a super high parts count kit either. That's kind of typical of the old Monogram kits, but Monogram always had good models. I mean, I always thought they were one of the better quality models back in the day, and they had a great selection of kits. Here we see the, I'll just kind of mock up the fuselage here for you guys. If I can get these locating pins. This is a long piece of plastic here. Just wanted to, this is the first time I've ever mocked it up. I just wanted to get a kind of an idea of how the seams and everything look on it. Not bad at all. I'm really impressed. It's with the exception of these couple little nubs that are on here and there, they're kind of blocking it. It's going together snug as a bug, and that line with a little bit of sanding will blend right in with the rest of the panel work on the ship. So that's pretty good. I like that a lot. Again, that was typical Monogram quality back in the day. They were decent kits. But just to kind of back this up for you, can't even get it in the camera, guys. It's huge. Really long and skinny. The wings look kind of gangly on it compared to the main fuselage. Like I said, it wasn't the most beautiful of planes, but it's just something about it. I don't think I'll open this bag, but what I'll show you here is we got the tail. We've got some gun bombardier and camera mounts for the little blisters on the sides of the hull, observation domes, some inner bulkheads for the fuselage, and those domes that go on the bottom of the airplane. I think some of those are radar domes and stuff like that. Gunner detail, looks like for the tail gunner, some spar stuff, pretty basic stuff. So that's all there and good. Here's the clear parts. Definitely don't want to open these up yet. Don't want to scratch them all up. But yeah, we've got some fine detail as far as the cage work that goes on the canopy and everything. But like I said, I'll either mask these and paint them, or do a masking and chrome pen, or one of those combinations. I may wind up just airbrushing the whole thing with masks. We'll see. Got all the little domes and blisters that go on the side. This kit was immaculate when I got it, and these kits are hard to find, period. I saw so many at model shows that were open, totally destroyed box, obviously probably missing some parts. And when Rick found me this kit, I was just thrilled to get it. It was a pristine kit for its age. So thanks again for that, Rick. Really appreciate that. Rick goes to a lot of model shows and always on the lookout for some of his friends in the hobby when they're looking for stuff like this, and so that's great. So I'm just going to roughly bag everything back up here, guys. Like I said, pretty straightforward on the build plan for this. We're just going to build it right out of the box, following the guide here. Just go from part 1 to the very end, and do a bunch of painting as we go. Probably will paint the pre-paint most of the fuselage. People often ask me a lot of times, about how I paint and everything. A lot of it will depend on the like the glass and everything. Like I know the canopy up here and the forward little bombardier window bay there goes in after the kit's already together. But like these blisters and stuff like this, if this is stuff that has to go from the inside out, and there's a lot of complicated stuff like that, I will go ahead and paint everything first, and then assemble it, and then just go back and touch up where I did my seam work here, and that way not have to mask all this stuff off, that's already going to be on the airplane. But we'll just see how that goes. If they go on afterward, then I can do a lot of this final painting after the model is put together. That's how I usually make up my mind on which way I'm going to go, because I do both. I don't always paint before I start, or the other way around. So but I think a lot of this, especially like these wing assemblies, once they're all put together, puttied and everything, I'll probably take the opportunity to do all the panel work on these, get all the colors down, because these basically just slide onto the model and lock in place with some glue once you're done with the, the fuselage is already done, so you just kind of lock them on there. So we can build these as separate whole assemblies and have them almost pretty much done. And it's a lot easier to work on it, like it's already big enough, so moving it around, flipping it over, painting and all the, getting at it with the airbrush and everything is going to be a lot easier. So probably do the wings and sub-assemblies and all that, fuselage sub-assembly, and then of course the tail goes on by itself at the end and all that. Landing gear has to go in there first and everything. Everything that has to go in the model inside the fuselage we'll have to paint and get it in there before we do anything on the outside. So that's the game plan, guys. I hope you will check it out. Really going to be a fun build. And then we'll take you right through to the end and show us hanging it on the wall in the old display room when we're done. Alright guys, I'll be back in a couple of days. We'll have the live modeling show this weekend on Saturday night. That's going to be I'm going to try to do that as a regular thing. There may be a disruption every once in a while. I'll try to let everybody know if that's going to happen. This build series and a lot more are going to be coming on the regular channel here. So probably around maybe Sunday I'll do the first put out the first update on this, and we'll start doing some assembly work. That'll be a lot of fun, guys. Hope you'll follow along. Until then, take care everybody, and happy modeling.